Lunch, back again. I really enjoy doing this with you because I feel like we're kind of like following your progress, and I think it's really tailored to newcomers. Obviously, you're going to be a little bit different than a lot of the newcomers just because it seems like you've got some capital to kind of sling around. I mean, you've already basically, I was looking at the RD breeding stats, you already passed me in right dirt. And I mean, I've probably, I don't know, I probably have half mine to still go in right dirt.
I was laughing because I saw the stats and I tweeted. I was like, "Oh gosh, this is embarrassing." I actually was hoping people would pass me, so thankfully they did.
Yeah, it's a little early. I still do a lot of mine late, but I do have a golf trip next week, so I'm not even sure what I'll end up doing. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about, it's been a month since we talked almost. How long has it been?
It's probably 5 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it was funny because I think we talked. I mean, I hadn't even gone through the only if what had happened last time is I had joined the game on a I think it was a Friday night or a Saturday, and then breeding ended on a Monday, and so I had frantically just bought both male and female horses. Not knowing, didn't really know what I was buying. I would buy a horse. I didn't have breeding reports. I didn't have any inbreeding tools, and so I would just buy a horse. I'm like, okay, this looks good, and then I'd go to breed, and it's like warning inbreeding. I'm like, oh crap. So I'd go buy another one, and then it wouldn't match up. So I'd find myself with like, you know, five studs that I had to then try and find ways to match up, and the breeds came out pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I look back and I ran some reports on them, and I mean they were not good breeds, but it was a 2 day process of learning, and then kind of the next round, I was able to breed with a lot more knowledge. I got the PFPs and I had the breeding reports, um, and so then was getting a little bit better. I think the it's now just trying to I'm looking at am I going to pull up my prefs, or if am I trying to pull up um, go for the subgrades, recognizing that sometimes it's just really hard to pull up, if you've just got that A plus or S minus trait and it's dragging everything down, is it even worth breeding that horse? So I mean, I think I'm just more thoughtful, I guess, in my refinement of it. But I mean, even after this last cycle, I'm kind of looking at my spreadsheet and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to breed these 20 horses next time, and I need to just try now. I think start really focusing on quality, um,
Yeah.
and because I'm going to run into problems like when it comes to I'm going to have, I didn't have the problem with too many racers this last cycle. The only racers I have are ones that I've bought, or that I claimed. And so this upcoming, or maybe it'll be one more month, I can't remember. Um, I'll finally have kind of my first wave that I bred,
Yeah.
but I can just see I'm going to have 35, and then another 35, and the next thing you know, you're going to be trying to race 70 plus horses, and I'm seeing too that trying to cut bait, like I've gotten decent at cutting the obvious ones, but I think the conversation I'd love insight on is I've got a handful of horses that are just continually frustrating me because they're getting top money line odds, everything on paper. I'm like, hey, like this horse, like, okay, like it's got to at least get me a win. And so then you just keep doing it, and the thing just keeps underperforming, right? Or I have one that, like that new Radical, it blows away its maiden. It gets like an 83 FF on its very first maiden, gets first, right? So I'm like, oh sweet. So then I put it in Kingmaker, and it gets back to back seconds on Kingmaker. So I was like, okay, like this horse has got legs. And then the thing proceeds to just be an absolute glue stick for me, but keeps pulling the top money line odds every single race, right?
Hmm.
And so, I'm frankly over this horse, but it's cost
One
me
of
so
my
much money.
things, one of my things, anytime I'm drawing a moneyline horse like that and it's not getting the results to match that, I almost still never want to really sell it just because I'd rather just wait, retire it. I think it usually gives you a sign that you at least have something under the hood. Obviously, if I look at just this bloodline, you've got Walter White, which is a blocker in RTS, but not really anymore. And I wouldn't say that this thing is like guaranteed to have breed value, but I think there's like a possibility, you know? I mean, it doesn't have the best stars, and having a 77 fleet figure is still pretty high if we look through even just the RTS studs. Let's see if we even can do that, because I don't really mess around in here a lot. But let's just sort by race earnings. So like 6, yeah, so, and then some of the fleet figures, like, yeah, whatever. So we can kind of look at the Kingmaker results early, out the gate did well, then didn't. The fleet figure still looks kind of all over the place. I think probably is a sign of temper, not as a decent temper median here. Yeah, I mean, this is just one of the things, and I like that you're trying it in these different races. Like, one of the things here, though, is probably you have, for these types of benchmarks specifically, I don't know when you entered this one, but having 77, if we look at the weight, you're going to have basically a lot more weight than, I see 2 of my horses were in here, and I'm guessing they were 73 or less. So a lot of times when I'm entering these benchmarks, I'm trying to be on the lower range of them, especially if I don't have a winner. If I have a winner, I'm kind of more willing to take on some weight, but also if I have a winner, I'm probably not kind of screwing around in these races trying to find an alternate avenue. So at least you are trying to find alternate avenues to race it. Pretty much all you can do other than just keep trying it maybe once a week, or, you know, in whatever, but it definitely does seem like maybe it kind of peaked early, or the other horses just kind of grew up and started beating it. This is definitely a case that, you know, a lot of new players, and I have so many of these horses, right? I mean, as much as I know about the game, I'm still kind of confused on a lot of the aging curves, stuff like that. So, New Radical, I don't know. I feel like even if you sell it for 200 bucks, you might end up regretting when you retire it. But do you have a lot of RTS females?
No.
Okay, yeah. So you can't even really use it, but you could get some breed revenue next time if it does happen to be okay. But maybe it won't. Do you have other horses like that?
Yeah, you know, we had talked briefly, but you know, Felicity's Shadow has been pulling. You know, good. You know, continues to pull good odds. Um, you know, Gunmetal was the one that we talked about. I haven't actually. So, which clearly it didn't. Let's see here.
All right, so before we start getting into specific horses, what I want you to tell us is a little bit of A, what you identified as like the biggest mistakes you made when you came into the game, and then B, what do you think you've learned in these 5 weeks that you've been playing? And for you, it sounds like winning is kind of like the ultimate goal and thrill, but also if you could just tell us like some of the exciting times, maybe when you have had those aha moments or learned something. I think that that's always good for the audience to know, and even for me to understand kind of what level you're at right now.
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest mistake and the thing, like, I don't. I mean, I don't really have any studs. Obviously, like, you know, I'll have some studs coming up through my breeds, and hopefully, you know, I actually have something of quality that I can start sending my horses to if they make sense. But you know, I've just realized the best method is, you know, there's always going to be a better stud for that specific horse, rather than just 100%, you know, thinking, oh, I need to own that stud and do it in house. And that was something that I had, very first weekend I did, right, was thinking, oh, I just needed to have the studs as well.
Yeah.
And then, when I've been going through the breeding and I'm curious on this because I'll look at a horse in like a breeding report for, um, I'll look at a horse, the breeding report, and the subgrades look the exact same, right? Like between um, Sweet Promotion and Splinter Cell, right? For
You want to
instance.
DM me a couple of those?
Yeah. Let me pull them up here real quick. Um, and I might be not using the exact right one, right? But then what's crazy is just how wide of a variance you actually get, in some of the same stats, right? So like, I'm just assuming that, the two horses you're comparing, right, have, one might be a 14, basically right on the S plus range, and the other one might be 14.9, right? So like they're materially different, but thinking about how just because when you're looking at the breeding, because it says SS minus or an S plus even, that all things are created equal, because then the outcomes are so different. But then I also like is and my theory is that different horses breed better with other horses, because you'll see the wicks on the breeding reports that will be sometimes just enormous, right? Like, and you'll have two S pluses, but for some reason that they've got a wick that's going to SSS minus, right? And
Yeah.
then you'll breed it with it, you'll see it with an SS minus and an S plus on start, for instance, and it doesn't even match that same wick, and it's like, what in the world? Like, and so that's, I think that takeaway has been something for me as I've been breeding is I I burned through all 100 of my reports. I mean, I spent so much time this last cycle, like analyzing every little thing, and so let me pull these things up and I'll send it to you. Let's see, Sweet
Yeah, and
Promotion.
I've did what you're doing now for probably 2 years straight, and I kind of haven't been doing it the last few months as far as just diving into the breeding reports because I do breed in so much volume, but there's definitely a lot to learn from them. Things that you're talking about are basically a simple way to explain it as an SS minus isn't always created equal. There's different radials, and then there's different genetics for the upside in each horse, which is kind of what you're always comparing, why you're looking at these different reports, and we can look at these two.
I don't know if those are going to be the right ones, but yeah, pull it up.
Yeah, and this tool that we're using, Horse Viewer, if you want to, I can send you this. But GVG made this a long time ago for the community. It's just a simple tool where you can put in. Have you found this tool, by the way?
Not that one. I've just
Okay.
used the overlays.
Okay, yeah. So basically, you can see Sweet Promotion is going to be red. It's going to show you, and usually whenever I'm looking at these reports, I'm always just looking at the ceiling stuff first, and then I'll look at the median stuff second. But just in this one, just looking at it, very, very similar um, studs. And what are the studs? Sweet Promotion and Minutemen. Let's go take a look
Yeah,
at
well, and
this.
it was funny because this was one that I got this breed late, and so, but I woke up at 4:30 in the morning before I was heading to the airport, and I saw that Cryptophore Columbus was price changed. I was like, oh, okay. So I went and I ran the breeding report for that right before I left, thinking, oh, when I get home, in 12 hours, I'll run it. And then when I came home, like, that was already sold out, and then I just had to change my game plan. But um,
Yeah, we think it's supposed to say Cryptophore, but it says
Cryptophore, yeah.
Siptifer. I think this was probably a blunder by them when they created it, and they're probably like me. If they make a mistake in the naming, they probably don't pay to get it done. But yeah, this actually kind of caused a little controversy, I guess I would say, in the community. And Poseidon, he's probably the reason you know of the game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his reputation is in this game, but he's the reason that I'm in this game, because I had followed him years ago on his YouTube channel for Zed. Like, I mean, we're talking the first month of Zed being around, maybe,
Hmm.
and then I think I'll paraphrase. I saw another YouTube video the day that Zed sunsetted. I just went to go reminisce and watch, one of those first videos, and he had maybe only 2 videos total on PFL, but he had that was like, wait, what is this game?
Yeah,
And I was
nice.
I was very much in that horse racing mode when I saw the video because I was sad that Zed was going away and my all my horses and stable was worthless now. So. Um, so
So, is this mare that you're showing us reports for, for the viewers? Does he fit or she fit with Siptifer
yeah,
Columbus?
yeah. I
Maybe
have that
send us
report.
that one because I know that these reports are going to look very nice. Talk about Poseidon. Poseidon's been in since the very, very beginning of the game. And so he's definitely bred some amazing horses. I think this is probably the best horse he's ever created, and maybe one of the best horses ever created in RD up to this point. I raced against this one pretty much every race. I was happy when he would go 7-8 because I had a horse that was 5-6 butthole. And very strong horse. The reveal is exactly what you'd want, basically, at least what I would want. If I want any of my stats to kind of be a little bit subpar, for me, it's temper. I still want all the racing stats, and then I guess maybe start, especially if I'm going for, that 7 to 10 range or whatever. But let's see what this report looks like. And on GVG's tool, we can actually, when you look at this, which one of these two that we initially had in here would you have rather bred to? And obviously we can see the higher prefs for, I guess it's Minuteman slightly.
Yeah. So my take was Minuteman was 4 times as expensive as Sweet Promotion,
Oh, so
and
that's easy.
so when I looked at the reports, they were immaterial relative to the cost, and I was like, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think we see that in stud pricing, and I think it's interesting to hear you say, one of the things that I'm kind of missing is I don't have studs. Whereas me, I've kind of been in the game since the beginning, and I feel like the stud market has changed drastically, so much so that it's really tough to justify paying 3, 4x for horses when we look at reports like this that show you how similar the outcomes are. Of course, and then if you factor in the variance and stuff, what it does is it leads kind of to a market where everyone's kind of undercut each other because all the reports are kind of similar. So then your only big advantages would be either bloodline uniqueness, which for the most part has kind of dissipated and we're beyond all of that. And then the second part would probably be on track performance, which Cryptopher has done really good. And so, did you compare these Sweet Promotion and Minuteman track performance at all? And like, when I
no.
mean track performance too, a big thing within that I'm starting to factor into my stud decisions probably more than ever is actual kind of like peak time. So like now that
Ooh,
we are
interesting.
starting to get some glimpses in aging, if I know that this horse was good out the gate and it was good through its 3-year-old, I know that it's probably got a decently good odds of giving me a good profile where there's a lot of horses that I still breed to that might not have ever won a race. And whenever I'm breeding those, I know when I start to look at the foals, if I'm getting good money line odds or whatever, that maybe they have a later age curve. And I hope that, the schedule continues to improve. But one of the big changes they made in the breed barn, doubling the tax, but then when you reduce the number from 35 to 18, they basically the stud itself basically got a pretty drastic reduction in value. And so even the highest studs in the market, I think were probably about 350 bucks. So 175 times 18, I guess near the max you can make on a stud is about 4,000 a month, which obviously is really good, but that's considering that you're not going to take any of the coverage yourself and that you have a stud that is so good it justifies, paying 2, 3, 4x for.
Yeah.
And so now, like when we first started, studding and breeding was kind of the meta. Now it's more breeding the racing horses, in my opinion. And when you do breed that stud, like you're talking about, you almost want it to be a stud that you can't even utilize a lot. Maybe that, has a lot of your common bloodlines so that you can really earn on it
Yeah.
in the stud barn. Whereas we see with what Poseidon did, initially they priced it at 35K, I think, um, and it didn't get a single action, which to me, isn't very good. This is probably the best racing horse in the game. If we can't get a $350 cover, to me that's a little sad in the game, but also it kind of shows you, even Butthole that I put in the barn, I put it in at 6,000, and really, if we look at its reveal wasn't as good, and its on-track performance was decently as good, I'd say. It's about as good as you can get earning-wise without winning a major. And the reason I price it there is A, because of the stars, and B, because of basically the overall statistical profile. Like it has 2 SS stats, and then it has 2 S stats, which is kind of rare for an SS minus. And so I knew that people probably weren't going to pay a lot, and I could only use this horse maybe 4 times, I think is what I used it. But skip to for Columbus, I remember we were talking about this pretty much the night before they did what they did, and I kind of assumed that whenever they were in the photo finish jockey club asking questions about the cooldown, that they were probably looking to see how many times they could get internal. And I kind of looked through their stable. I only saw like maybe 8 or 9, but I didn't want to go through all of their horses. But they did change the price to 20K, and I think they got all but 2 of the covers. So I guess a lot of people either didn't like that or had problems with that. To me, it's a lot less egregious than some of the other stuff that happened kind of before you came, where you could basically just run train in like 5 minutes. You could do 35 breeds in 5 minutes on your own horse for minimum. And so they still paid a pretty big tax, and I think it's kind of more of a fair play to them rather than hating. It's kind of a hate the game, don't hate the player, hate the game type thing. So I don't know, what would you like to see, or do you have any thoughts on just this specific horse and that specific scenario? Like to me, I think the easiest, simplest solution is just don't allow price changes. And there have been a lot of other things, like obviously it would be good if we had a day or 48 hours in advance of seeing all the possible studs. It's always going to have some little edge cases, but
Yeah, I would have loved, I spent a lot of time, over that week, trying to prepare, just knowing that, I wasn't going to get it all done on Sunday night. And then, but it was funny, like every single night or, a couple times a day I'd check. And because I was doing, RD, I had every horse's name memorized. So like I would immediately spot if a new one came on. And so I was like, oh, okay, nothing. So I kind of was like, all right, we're going to be fine. Nothing new is going to come in. So I had made my plans. I was set on it. And then I saw the Poseidon tweet on it about that horse. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be amazing. But then before I even added it in, I just tried to go, optically look. And I realized it wasn't going to work on my best horse, which is my SS minus that I could breed, Calming Breeze. And so then I kind of looked through. I only had like 2 that I even thought were probably worth, possibly considering. But even they weren't even it, right? And so for me, if Calming Breeze would have been able to breed with it, I probably would have actually dropped the 350, and just bred it, just because I was like, all right, like if it would have matched up with the breeding report and stuff. But I didn't have a horse that was good enough to justify breeding with that horse, and then running the risk that I don't even get an SS minus, or it just not a great outcome, and I kind of squandered the money. So for me, my plan is, for for those really higher end upper tier breeds going forward is, I'm only going to use them on my, you know, my big boys, and I just don't have a lot
Your
of big
big
boys.
girls, you mean,
Or, yeah,
right?
sorry, my big girls. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just don't
hey.
have a lot of those right now to kind of justify it.
Yeah, and just for the listeners, we're both battling some allergy issues, so if we cough, sneeze, snort, forgive us, but we didn't want to back out on the show. So uh, you can kind of see in the report, though, comparing, obviously, you have pretty much a full half subgrade above what, Minuteman, which you kind of identified as the cheaper alternative to
Or no,
Siptifer Columbus or
oh
whatever.
yeah. Well, Minuteman has been listed, right? Like, remember he was 24,000 last cycle, and he only got 4 covers. And then this cycle, I think they dropped him to maybe 16,000. But still, if you look at Sweet Promotion at 4K, it the Minuteman just didn't, for at least this horse just wasn't, you know it
Wasn't
didn't
the,
it didn't
yeah.
justify the money.
And I mean, you could even make the argument when looking at Middleman or Sweet. You're saying Sweet Promotion was the cheap one?
Yeah, that's what I ended up
Okay.
reading with Gaia. Yeah.
Let's just do here. I mean, you can kind of see that, like, sure, your upper echelon outcomes you're a little bit lower on both speed, finish, heart than Siptifer Columbus, but in a lot of the scenarios where variance takes its toll, you can come out with a better horse than the one with Siptifer Columbus. And so I think this is actually one of the market dynamics that people are starting to understand is like, all right, if I'm going to breed in volume, I mean, and then obviously you can talk about the math because you breed in volume, you take the lesser of the chances. Over the long run, your median is still going to be lower, but your single case outliers could still kind of be equivalents. And I
Yep.
think that this definitely is a really good report, Sipta for Columbus, and I would definitely I think I had like 4 or 5 horses, and I even stayed up till 11 that night. Usually I'm in bed at like 9, but considering there was 10 hours to go in the stud barn, and then once it got to about 11, I was like, man, I know Poseidon's in Australia. I don't even know. And when he made it 20K, I don't even know if I might have taken 2 instead of 4. But I was kind of hoping when they first got into the game, they had one of the best studs, but it shared a bloodline with another stud. So they were both 9923. And what Poseidon and this other horse basically had to do was undercut each other to get business. And so Poseidon made it 4K for Cyberpunk. So I basically used the hell out of that one for like, I don't know, 4 to 5 seasons. And it also had a really good, I don't even know if this one came from that bloodline. No, I guess not. Well,
Ovation.
cryptographic might have been,
Yeah,
but
Ovation was the bloodline that screwed it up for me on most of my horses.
yeah. And it screwed it up. It was either Ovation, Zeitgeist, or cryptographic that kind of screwed Poseidon's best horses from also going here. And I think that that's kind of what happens in the game. And like, even you get ahead and then people leapfrog you and then you leapfrog them. It was like Blue Elder was the first with the SS minus with Exoticus nearly like a year ago, maybe longer. And it took a long time for other SSs to even pop up that were comparable or as good. But that's really the beauty of the game is kind of you end up blocking yourself out so other people who have more versatile bloodlines or don't have the same ones get to hit your stud and either surpass you or catch up. And it's actually one of the things that I think they made a change where you can't breed like all the 0 and 1 year olds foals. They won't be able to breed until they're 4. And I was looking through Left Dirt the other day, kind of comparing my stud barn or my barn basically to YSM and Absolute Horsepower, and some other top LFD or LF, I mean LDS. Sorry, my brain's not working too good, but just kind of comparing, and I was thinking like, well, a lot of the reasons that I called up with these guys in the past was if I have a 3-year-old that can't compete in the major and it's a girl and I'm not on the board, I'll just retire and get a head start. Well, now, considering that we all have to wait till 4, it kind of eliminates that catch-up factor to the top um, barns, and I kind of disagree with that in general. I would rather us still be able to retire at 3, but obviously it's not a big enough deal or hill for me to die on. But so
Well, I hated it because all of that change happened literally 2 days after I joined.
mhm.
So,
Yeah,
it for me, like, I mean, I'm just playing massive catch up, and I'm gonna have realistically, like, I'm not gonna have any competitive horses,
you already
until
have one. I already found one.
June or July, right?
Star at the
Um,
River is competitive,
yeah. So
and you
Start at
might
the
even.
Rivers. Well, I think presumably she's actually struggling. Like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like, she used to go, in the last turn, she would explode and then just blow people away in the straightaway. She's now been like second or first in that last thing and gives it up and gets last now. Like, she's breaking my heart lately, but um, I just registered her for an 8, for the third time, the 8 furlong as well. I want to test her there and just see, because I
You
mean,
know
she
what it
runs.
might be? Well,
She,
no. She was still doing really good. I was gonna say there's some trends that my brain kind of picks up on. Like one of the trends is juveniles. A lot of these horses are running stakes races, right? And so I still think that what matters in stakes and what matters in like graded can be different as far as how heart plays into it. And so one of my first little guesses was that maybe it's not very good in heart, but we can see that you conquered that theory right away because you won 3 out of 4 of the first graded races it ran. And I think that a lot of people see this exact scenario, so it's really cool that we're talking about it. But a lot of people see this exact scenario where you have a completely dominant 2-year-old season and you are confined to racing against 2-year-olds. Um, and then when you get up to 3-year-olds, either the rest of the horses kind of grow up a little more or you're just not as consistent. You're still, it looks to me like all the same races, you're still racing against the exact same competition that you were racing to begin with. I
yeah.
think what does happen though is attrition occurs. And so now pretty much only the people that think they can either qualify or win the big race are racing these, whereas well, these are still five horse fields, so maybe that doesn't even hold water, but this is just something that, we're watching and learning, and I've got a horse that has pretty much won every race it's been in that I'm still hoping this type of curve doesn't occur. And I've seen horses just like the Star at the River that kind of lull for a little bit, and it could just be pure variance. The reason these outcomes, you just pretty much have to keep racing it and see. But if we look at the fleet figures, early, mid, late, you might even want to test because you should have a really high start floor. So, like some of the times, I have seen that as horses age, the DP can kind of change based on either how the stats grow or the competition grows or whatever. But
Yeah, nothing in that horse's bloodline. Like, if you look at just its bloodline, it doesn't make sense that this horse is such a beast. I mean, it had that 11F in the third time feeder race that was the fastest ever. Um, so the things like, but then I look at the bloodline, I'm like, nothing in this would say, oh, this horse is going to be fast.
yeah, but I honestly like just going through the amount of volume that I have a lot of breeds that are similar to this, and it's always like, obviously, I'm cutting bait on mares. I'm always trying to, like this month especially, my goal is like only 125 foals, and I know that sounds outrageous, but I've been pumping out like 250, 300, basically because of stuff like this. Like a lot of the times, I don't know where my best horse is going to come from, and
Hmm.
really, I hypothesize that when you do get outcomes like this, where the mare wasn't good, and it kind of jumps, and it's just amazing that like this is going to be a really good breeding mare, regardless of even if it wins another race, because I think what you'll see when you put this into reports next month when you're breeding it is that, like, let's say you did hit the S plus stamina here and you did catch, like, I don't know, we'll just say S plus or SS minus speed, but my theory from the beginning is when your genes kind of go above both the male and the female, then that specific stat, so for instance, let's just say you got SS minus stamina here, you rolled through S minus and S plus, and you somehow ended with SS minus stamina. Well, I would think, and I've seen on the reports, that that stamina wick is going to be a lot higher, your ceiling for that specific stat. And so whenever you get that across the board with some of your stuff, like some of my biggest LTS, I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about, and it came through Business Boosted, which this horse hasn't done anything on the track. But if you look at this girl, which is now one of my best breeding girls, you can kind of see that I got SS start that rolled through both of the parents. I got the top possible outcome, the S plus speed, so hopefully I carried that genetic. If you look at stamina, I carried the best of both worlds. And then in finish, I kind of rolled through.
Wow.
So I rolled through in finish, and I rolled through in heart.
Wow.
And so this horse obviously made like my first SS minus in LTS, and I think it might be one of the highest prefs. And even if this horse doesn't win, it'll offer a lot of good stud stuff. Obviously, I like Rat Salad, but those are just some of my ideas and the things that I really like. And like, obviously, having A plus temper probably killed that horse, and it could have been an age thing. It could have just been temper. I don't know, but whenever I revealed that, I was super excited just because it kind of molds to my theory and the things that I like to do and how I like to breed. And so it goes back to what you're talking about. It's kind of scary for me to sell some of the breeds like you're looking at on yours. And I kind of think that no matter what, this is going to be a really good breeding horse for you, especially this early in your career.
Well, yeah, and so one of the thoughts I had was, and I haven't even checked Bloodline. I haven't gone through that exercise, but you know, this is one where then I would want to go breed it with, you know, not like a Columbus, or you know, do something and just see what happens, right? Like, you know, put some great racing genes together. But you know, like I said, I don't have anything in the stable right now that frankly is justifying, you know, a $300 breed.
Yeah, well, it looks like, you know, you've played the game 5 weeks, and in, I guess, 2.5 weeks, you're going to have 5 SS minus hit the track. And I think, like, you got a good deal on some of these. I think it was this LDF. Either way, you've kind of built natural high floor for breeding, which I think is really good long term, but early on, you know, getting kind of this high pref. I think we talked about this on the last show, right?
I don't know if we talked about this. I don't think we talked about this on the show, but we just texted about it.
Okay, yeah. And so, you know, has high sprinter value. Probably temper might be the only thing, but whenever these things roll up, you know, in grade, you obviously rolled above a median outcome. So you kind of start looking at them differently, and it's kind of the same thing with the horse that we were just talking about that you currently have on the track. You might want to try that thing short.
Yeah, I put Star at the River in the 8F just to mix it up. Like, I mean, half of it was like, hey, let's shake the cobwebs off you, and you know, you maybe you got in a little rut. We're gonna kind of change your mindset. So I given it some different oats. Hired a new guy to muck her stable, so trying to mix it up.
Yeah, and really, like, even if that doesn't work, I think, like, just sticking to what works, keep trying the things that you won at. I mean, I think that, like, obviously some of the wins were in claimers, it looks like, so in stakes, well, you still won some there.
I claimed it.
You claimed this horse.
Yeah, I claimed it. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, that's how you got it.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, claiming is a great way to build. I'm starting to see like today I ran an 87 fleet figure in LTS and got third with my best horse. And so I wasn't even mad at the outcome. And so obviously in RDF, these FFs are like higher than ever. Let's just go see what the FF of who won this of the race. Because I kind of do use these as far as like strength of the horse and just kind of a good baseline. Obviously, they can vary according to, you know, what race. Looks like he ran an 87, so that's pretty good. It's like the floor just gets higher and higher on the fleet figures, and then we see it in the reveals. The stats just keep growing and growing, and I
Yeah.
think that that's like part of the fun. And so, like, obviously, when you first came in, you didn't really have a good understanding of the breeds, but now you're understanding. What would be the biggest things you would say to someone who was in your shoes 5 weeks ago? We are coming up on the Derby, which always gets us a little spike in newcomers, people that are interested, and hopefully they find their way to this video and can kind of get a couple lessons from you. What would you tell them?
Everybody told me the same thing, and I didn't listen. But everyone said, "Oh, go slow, go slow." I don't learn that way. I had to learn by going fast and crashing into the wall. But I think it's probably the most simple thing is just reaching out and talking to people, because the perspectives that you get from just being brave to just message somebody or to post in the channel. I would get nervous, be like, oh, am I going to get shit on, or am I going to get some negative feedback here? Or so, it doesn't exist in this community, and then
Yeah.
at all, right? So like, there's just no dumb question, and then I've just found myself like, there's people that I message with all the time, and where I'm like kind of giving them advice and some guidance, and I'm laughing. I'm like, so it's just this massive kind of learning tree, right? And I'm at the first branch, but you just got to put yourself out there. If you don't put yourself out there, you're just operating in this vacuum, and there's just not enough information that you can process on your, like, if you're brand new and you don't ask 1,000 questions, and then like I just learned a ton about how you were thinking about rolling through and getting the higher end, or going above and beyond on the breeds or the stats. Like, that's a completely new philosophy for me. So like, I'm going to go back through my stable and start kind of thinking through that and looking at it. But if you're left to your own devices, all you're looking at is how many stars does the horse have, and you get wowed and mesmerized by this so sexy pink SS minus. And so you just see that and you kind of get clouded. And my worst purchase I ever made, like, I just saw this one horse, was like, oh, it was like Magnific Tia or something like that. I bought it my first night. um, I bought this thing and I was like, oh, this looks so sweet. I was this worst freaking horse imaginable I could have ever bought. No prefs. um, I got mesmerized by, the, yeah, I can't give the, oh, that's the full of it, but um,
Okay.
yeah,
So
but
you
like,
saw
I saw
big.
like, oh man, SS minus, SS minus. I'm just like, oh, this is sweet. Like, it looks cool, right? Like, and it was just what was available on the market. And I was so new. I was in a rush. I just didn't even understand what I was looking at. Now I look at stuff and I think I'm a lot more um, judgmental of all that stuff, because I've realized, and partially you learn when you go to list a horse that you think is awesome, and you just keep lowering it, lowering it. It finally sells for 400 Derby. You're like, man, I sold it for the change under the couch cushion, right?
Yeah.
Is all it was worth.
Yeah, and I think that like naturally we're going through that correction, especially like on the market with especially expendable mares and expendable foals. And obviously with a lot of the breeding changes, our volume of horses even though we surpassed breeding, I think we went from like 11,000 horses born to like 7,000 this past, and I'm not sure, but just ballpark area. So hopefully that kind of course corrects, and I kind of always believe it does. I think the thing that I really love about the game is that like almost every Web3 project, every NFT project has had the same type of problem. They've all kind of given out these stimmies or incentivized early adoption. Then everyone adopts, kind of prices just go down. Eventually the thing dies off. Well, I kind of think that even though we have kind of constricted a little bit, we're in this like kind of tightly bound thing that could expand again just because it's kind of a working product with working revenue, has demand, has kept most of the OG users and most of the people that actually love the gameplay involved in the game. And you kind of get off of that stimmy economy to like now's the real economy, and now you can really grow, market all of these things. But I think that circling back to, it seems like what you learned about Magnifica Tia or whatever is that even though it had some cool stats, the thing that stinks about this horse is the preferences. And really, as we get further and further along, it's really tough to win with few preferences. Like almost all of my horses that don't have good preferences can't win. And I think that I have like one horse that defies the odds here. And it's like 5 stars, and I think it's profited maybe, yeah, about 300. It kind of has tailed off a little bit. Do you see that this thing that's occurring with
Yeah, yeah,
does
I didn't
this
know.
occur for you?
I'll look right. It hasn't last I
Okay.
checked, but
Well, I just keep thinking I'm on shrooms every time. It's a fun trip being on photo finish. But yeah, I
let's
don't
see.
know what it is about.
No, no, it's
Yeah,
not
a
doing it
lot
on
of people
mine.
have said that. So I think that Photo Finish loves to play little tricks with me. So whenever I see stuff like that, I'm just like, all right, I know you guys are just fucking with me. So
Actually, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're the only one seeing it. Yeah.
yeah, I think so too. That's what I'm saying. And they're probably
um,
going to say the same thing. But I think Bryce has kind of looked at it or whatever. It's not a big deal. I don't even really use that chart too much. But
I
really, the
I don't
core
either.
point is as we get more and more horses, as the stat profiles go up, you need more and more stars to compete. And also, just having stars doesn't necessarily be all that competitive either. You pretty much need to hit bingo on everything because
Yeah.
everyone is breeding. Like we just saw crypto, like I'm just gonna
Siptifer?
call it. I'm just gonna call him Cryptopher Columbus because that's what he was in my head. But when I went to
Same.
search, etc.
I didn't realize that the change literally until the breed. It was like, I mean, I actually searched it. I found it. I watched maybe 10 of its races. Like, I was like following this horse through its 2 year olds. Never even recognized that it wasn't actually Cryptopher Columbus.
Yeah, I
So,
did whenever I started looking at seeing that it got no covers, and then I was like, oh, they're gonna change the price or whatever. But you just see horses like this. Obviously, you're gonna stack on preferences. You're gonna roll at least to some of these stats. You might roll through them, and that's where we might get our first SS, etc. But the game is always leapfrogging up, and they did make a lot of the breeding changes for the S minuses and stuff like that. Have you paid any attention to that or thought about maybe breeding S minuses or creating a little S minus factory, considering how cheap those will be to breed?
no, not at all.
Yeah.
It unfortunately it doesn't interest me, and I'm only, like I on this last cycle I had 2 get bred as S's, and which was actually wild because my first cycle I didn't get any S's, even though those breeding reports, you could have justified that they could have been, and I mean I was like just disgusted and devastated. But then I've come around where I was like, you know what, these are probably really high end S's. And so maybe like they'll be actually fun little racers on the S side. But yeah, like
And you just want to play at the top end. You're competitive. You obviously have some resources. So that kind of brings me to this, you know, I saw this, let's see, I guess you bought this 8 days ago. And
Oh yeah.
so I didn't even check the pricing on this or anything, but how many ETH did it cost you to get
Yeah,
this
so
guy?
well, as the tweet says, so I'll make everyone sick here. So right when apes came out, like I had several apes that I bought like right after Mint, and I told my dad, I was like, we just have to buy apes. Like I don't know how to tell you, but we just have to do it, right?
Was it like
Eh,
point 0.1 or 0.15 when you were buying them, or
Oh, I
like
mean,
half an
they
ETH?
were like, $1,000, right? I think
Okay.
was kind of around the price that I was buying them at.
So probably
And
about a
so
half ETH.
so I get my dad. Finally, I convince him, and he's in. And at this stage, they're maybe we're now at the stage where they're getting a little heat. And I find this one. I'm talking to the guy. He's willing to cut me a deal, and I think it was for like, I want to say $20,000.
Okay.
I don't remember what the ETH number was, but it was like roughly 20.
And what's the
And
rarity on it versus how many there are?
yeah, this is the 92nd rarest one out of 10,000.
Okay.
But that trippy skin is
Yeah.
super desirable, and then the aesthetics on it. And um, so my dad was going to pitch in with me at that stage. We did not have a ton of resources to be spending money. I'd already spent way too much on monkey art, when no one really knew what it was. And
Yeah.
5 a.m. my dad texts me and he's like, hey, I'm backing out of the deal, sorry. And I was like, oh.
How
So I
old's your
had to,
dad for context?
I mean, 70-ish, right
Okay.
around 70. But
That's,
he's
I mean,
very,
even cool that you'd even get him interested in it.
oh, I mean, he's very forward on all this kind of stuff, believe it or not. I always send him my race videos from PO. He loves all this stuff, living vicariously. But then, so I don't buy it. I call the guy and I'm like, sorry, I can't get this ape. He then sells it, next day, roughly the same price. That ape, about 3 months later, 4 months later, sells for almost $1 million.
Wow.
And we missed it
I
because
remember
we
that
couldn't
summer too.
scratch 20 grand. And I was just so devastated and sick. And so then, um, maybe like 2.5 months ago, someone posts that they bought this ape. I'm like, oh, it's just rubbing it right back in my face. And it was a whale, and I was like, well, this thing's gone forever, and it'll never come up on the market. And then maybe 2 weeks ago, I randomly just am looking at Trippy Apes, and I see that this is listed. I could not believe it for
Hmm.
90. So I don't. It was like $92,000, and so again, I'm not going to buy it at 92,000, but I just reached out and I was like, hey, just curious, where are you at on this? Are you looking to negotiate? And I was trying to kind of think through it, and I was like, well, I'll sell my other ape, try and do it, and I was like, I got a deal closing here in a little bit. I mean, I'm like mental gymnastics trying to think through it, and I
Did you
just
try to
never
bring
got.
your dad back into the deal or
Yeah,
no?
no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to that's the one thing. I don't want partners, right?
Dude, I'm telling you, like a bunch of my friends, they have partners, there's syndicate stables, there's people that have pieces of other stables. To me, it's just insane. I did partnership one time and that was on Top Shot. And luckily we made money or whatever, but it's just whenever you're in these kind of risky type things and you don't know when to sell, you don't know when to
Oh,
buy, kinda. It's so tough to figure out how to get on the same page,
yep.
And so I kind of fully agree with you there. But obviously, when you pull resources with your friends, sometimes you can get things you might not have access to by yourself. So sometimes it does make sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a tough one to do, but if you can do it without a partner, you obviously want to do it. So I decided not to get the ape. I mean, it was like 4 days. I kept telling him, I was like, yeah, I'll get you an offer. I'll get you an offer. And it just wasn't sitting right in my stomach. And I just knew it wasn't the right thing for me to spend even 70 grand on it.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning, 6 a.m. He messaged me unsolicited. He's like, hey, I'll sell this to you for 36 ETH.
Wow.
And ETH at the time, get this. So from that message to when the deal got done, it was the day like
Dropped like
ETH
300
absolutely
bucks or something.
nuked, right? So
What
it
is
went from
ETH at now? It was at like 1600 or so when you bought this, maybe?
No. So this is the
Oh,
crazy
it's
thing.
16 now. Wow.
No,
Man,
I got this
even
thing
more.
by the time the deal closed, ETH was at 1430,
Oh,
and
wow.
so but we had just negotiated on an ETH price,
Yeah.
um, and so I ended up saving 10 grand almost just because the deal took. He's like, yeah, I'll list. So I put an offer in. He's like, well, let's just do it on the OpenSea deal thing. I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I'm gone. So when I get home, it was just this like crazy thing. I mean, literally, like we started talking at 6 a.m. and the deal closed at midnight. Right. So
And he
like,
paid like 90 ETH for it or something?
I,
How much ETH?
well, I don't know what he paid because
Okay.
he had done it, I think, in a.
It was
There was
open.
another deal in there. It sold another time for like 250,000, but
Okay.
whatever. I was like, all right,
That's
I've
interesting.
I've got my ape, but
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that a little bit. I think like we've obviously brought in a lot of different communities, like some people are sporting the cyberpunks, some people are sporting the apes, the monkeys, I think bears are one of them. I don't know. It's always been fun. I've been through a lot of these different things. So what about the OpenSea thing? Is that going to be an airdrop or what? Because I definitely traded on that site some.
yeah, yeah, good. I mean, for everyone listening, I would if you bought NFTs, you know, just be prepared. I went through like they have these. There's like someone built some websites that you could kind of check to see roughly if based on what their valuation would be and how much they would allocate, like what kind of your estimated OpenSea drop would be, which was interesting to go through. But I linked up like all of my wallets from back in like 21, 22. It
Hmm.
was insane. I think I had 3.7 million of traded volume.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh
I
my
feel like you've done
gosh.
well, sir. I don't think I would have that much.
Well, I mean, the thing was, is like I was looking. I mean, so much of it was just it was buying and selling apes, right? Like it was,
Yeah. You were doing it
um,
like you're doing horses now, but
yeah,
way
and
more.
it's yeah. So it was just a lot of just volume on apes, you know. But so I think they're going to do. I mean, they've said that they're doing a token, the C token. It's coming. Um, who knows when? And
Yeah.
obviously with the market and stuff like that, I
They're
think there's
probably
some.
gonna try to time it because I was working on a deal where we're gonna possibly launch, and right now it just seems like we're everything's on hold with that
Yeah, yeah.
project and plan. And so, I mean, it makes sense. I think like I've been still watching the markets, and it seems like nothing really runs more than like 20 million these days on Solana. And then there was a big thing that happened yesterday on ETH. Did you see
Was
that?
this the
Oh, it was on
base?
Base. Yeah,
Yeah.
Base is for everyone, I guess. And it was like officially tweeted by them, and it did not have a very good outcome very quickly. And so, yeah, the entire market I think is either just spooked or, some type of correction. Maybe I don't know if it's tariffs or what, but you can always find safe haven here at Photo Finish, racing horses, breeding horses. And so
I
what's
was gonna
got
say
you
the same.
excited about it? And what's like your bullish thesis on this game? Because obviously, or is it just you enjoy it and you want to play it? Or do you believe like this is a very good, investment?
Yeah, I'm not the guy that's like I look at Zedge for instance, who's very focused on stacking crown, which for everyone listening is the underlying token. Um, I, I own like no crown. I haven't really gone and bought any. I think that there's tremendous upside from that standpoint, but like I'm not looking at this. I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority on this, but I am playing this like I would, you know, a video game or, like, gosh, like I
Yeah.
think I told you, I was playing, Escape from Tarkov for hours on end every single night, as an adult. And so now like this is a video game for me, but this is more than a game because there's the ownership component and then there's the strategy component. And I love that, they do a great job from a stickiness standpoint because you breed today, well, you don't even get, you don't get, you have to stick around if you want to
Yeah.
see what you actually got, right? And you got to stick around for a couple months. Um, so, what gets me excited about it is, I mean, there's nothing better than when I look at my schedule. I'm like, or I get the email. It's like so and so is racing in 10 minutes. I'm
Come on,
like,
you
oh
haven't turned off
yes.
your emails yet? You haven't got enough horses. Just wait.
No, are you kidding me?
The first thing you'll do is go to this disable all emails button the very first day of every season, just to make sure you don't get them, and then you'll
Oh,
still sneak through.
yes. Right now, this is like, I mean, gosh, especially now because I've already, thrown in the towel on, most of
Some of
my
these
racers.
races.
Yeah. So like, I don't have a ton that's racing, or I've already just retired them. I was like, screw this crap. Like,
Hmm.
let's retire you. Almost out of rage, and
Be careful with that. That's called tilt, sir. That happens in poker quite a bit, and I have seen a lot of people tilt retire, and obviously a lot of times it's after the major, which you've pretty much explored all your earnings possibilities. But I think another thing I'd like to talk about is like this season, particularly for the 4-year-olds, like Kingmakers are paid in Derby this month. Um, and just like for 4-year-olds, I think that there's a lot more earning possibility than there has been. And that's something that I'd like to continue to see, because most of the times I'm just retiring everything at 3 that can't race, and then racing through 3 and then retiring during this little breeding period we're in. But I've already identified a lot of my 4-year-olds I'm going to keep on the track. Either they were Lineage Cup, which is now paid out in Derby and not Crown, and for substantially more than the previous 8,000
huh.
Crown thing. I think that's, let's see what the Lineage Cup is. I think it's $1,000 free roll, but there's like maybe $3,000 or $4,000 free rolls. So the earning possibilities is 1,500 to 2,000 if you have a good horse for the 4-year-old season. And then we're seeing breeding and foals demand kind of coming down a little bit. So I think like having a good racer, and also whenever you get a good racer, it's just so tough to get them. Next month I hope that I have a really tough decision with this Ready Set No, which is basically been like the best horse I've ever had. And it even got third today, but it's out of 33 races, it's only gotten out of second 4
Wow,
races. And I
20
didn't
out of
try the
33.
Derby yesterday. I figured like, all right, it's so strong, let me try it on the Derby, and I'll probably definitely try it on a right turf. Because Zedge actually had a horse, I think it was Charlie Chaplin, which was really dominant horse, left turf, let's see, 15, so wow, nearly a year ago. And this horse won the right turf major and the left turf
Oh
major.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, just brilliant. So, and I think he qualified for the Derby as well, but it was firm, so he kind of whatever. But this is probably, and look, I guess it earned about $20,000 over its course. And if there's anything that like I wish that like obviously that the new betting thing kind of takes off, but that in order to get the breeding and the studding, specifically to get the studs where it does make more sense to pay 400 or 500 bucks, it's a lot easier to pay that when the prize pools are growing, when betting's coming in, when things are getting juiced. Because really that's when we've had it before, is when Crown was kind of juicing everything, made
Uh,
everything extremely profitable. And now we have a new, um, hopefully more sustainable long term, but obviously it probably take a more slow growing movement. But I'm kind of excited about that. And obviously OTB kind of has its issues with target audience, installing, learning, all of these things. But it also has a lot of really positive things working for it, just as far as like the decentralization, which is kind of what got me into Web3 and crypto anyway. And so it kind of makes sense in that regard. And we'll see what they have going for the Derby, because they've kind of hinted that that will be kind of the first time they're showcasing this OTB. Do you do a lot of betting on the thing, or are you just mainly just trying to win and learn and race? Have you done much betting
I
on any of the majors or anything?
I actually don't gamble.
Yeah,
So yeah, like I say I don't gamble, but I'm racing horses,
and
like this
buying
and
monkeys,
buying,
but
monkey art. But yeah, like I guess I have never gambled on anything like that. And I used to bet sports maybe. I mean, we're talking like the last bet I made was in 05, and I haven't gambled since. So I at this stage, yeah, I'll never do it.
this kid, how old's the kid in the background?
Oh, you can hear that. Yeah, she's 2.5, going on.
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask because
monster.
my
Yeah.
got a 3-year-old and he'll send me videos, and then one of my best friends has a 2-year-old and they're just going through that stage. You know what? That's kind of how I feel when some of my horses lose at times, or I breed and don't get the outcome. So I
Oh,
kind of will yell just like
I think
that.
she's looking at her stable right now, and that's what's
Yeah.
happening. She no, she's big in Lion King right now, so she's Simba, and she's really
Oh,
working on her roar.
nice.
Yeah, but it's I mean, but going back to this, I mean, I love just the nature of the game, right? And like watching, like I said, the email comes through, I get excited. Oh man, I get 2 races today. I'm pumped, right? And the hardest thing for me is being patient and not trying to just force more races just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Um, because I did that the first maybe month or maybe 3 weeks. Like I just wanted to have races and just
Yeah.
have something to do, and it was foolish because they were just bad horses. Now
Well, you were
I,
learning. You
I've
kind of wouldn't have
refined it.
known they were bad horses without exploring, paying. I think that that is one of the trickier parts of the game is it does take some investment to kind of even learn that your horse is bad, Like even if you're playing it where we're playing at, we're racing basically $15 maidens at least 2 or 3 times before giving up on a horse, and as that expands, whatever. And so yeah, it's pretty much though. The thing that I love about it is it is a business. So like obviously one of the things you're already doing is learning, all right, where to cut that you're not making money and where to kind of exploit where you are making money. And right now you've kind of just invested a lot, and so I definitely want to keep in touch and just keep following along because I think like these chats are really good for either new people and they're good for me too. And like you talked about how like you're on branch one, I would say you've already climbed like at least 4 or 5 branches by now. But talking to you kind of gives me perspective of A, when I first began, which I think even though I still love the game, there's nothing that beats when you first learn, right? And so like with poker, it was the same thing. When I first learned and I first started winning, it was just such an adrenaline rush. When
Yeah.
I did that in DraftKings, FanDuel, same thing. And then when I came to this game, and now I really approach the game from just my typical routine, data analytical, trying to maximize my earnings. I am continually learning every day. I think you have to do that. And really, I think the game is so beautiful in that the more I learn, sometimes the less I know. Like, I'll think I have an aging pattern down on a horse, and then I'll race one more time and it'll win, or, I'll think a bloodline is has just a quick peak and die, but then that foal will just keep being good. And so that's just something you have to kind of continue learning. And I definitely want to continue learning and expanding. So you got any kind of closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean I appreciate you being patient and taking the time. I told you a couple days ago. I was like, sorry for blowing you up. There's a lot of people that I've blown up. Their discords that first month with just incessantly dumb questions, probably. But thank you and thank them for being patient and taking those dumb questions, because now they've really subsided. Right now, my questions and stuff are a little bit more refined. I can figure stuff out for myself a lot more now that I've kind of got a good working knowledge of it. But um, yeah, the initial kind of investment is tough, for a new stable, and so I think you kind of have to decide, like, what are you looking to do? For me, like, I want to just have fun horses, and I want to have a cool looking stable that I can go through and see my SS minuses, and I can, obsess over their stats and the bloodline, and think about, okay, how can I make this better next time? Okay, I bred it with so and so. Okay, next cycle, I really want to try this one, or so it's just this kind of constant evolution or learning, and it's fun. So if it's not fun for you, this probably isn't going to be the game. But what's nuts is, like, for me, and I assume for everyone that's kind of deep in this thing, like, you'll sit there with your app open and you're just constantly, playing around with it and tinkering and playing. So that's kind of how I, am with this. And
Well, we can be friends now. You kind of remind me of Zedge, because when Zedge came in, I'm like, oh, this is cute. Yeah, he's investing a lot of money. And now, when he starts to beat me on the track, I'm like, no, fuck Zedge. Like, who the hell is House of Zedge? So, like, for now, it's all fun and games. And then in a couple months, when I start hating you, we'll stop doing it. So, just enjoy it. And as far as, like, people helping or whatever, like, always feel free to slide into my DMs. I'm willing, even if you're like, hey, where do you think I should breed this horse? Like, if you tell me or you send me that DM with every freaking horse, I'll get annoyed. But if you send it to one, I'll kind of give you either like top 3 or 5, kind of show you kind of what I'm looking at or what are the possibilities. So it's obviously breeding week. I feel really strongly about my breeding game and just kind of understanding the full context of everything. So yeah, always feel free to shoot me up, or not shoot me up, but shoot me a question. And yeah, so good chat with you. We'll catch up soon, and I can't wait to see some of these SS minuses you got hit the track next month. And I hope that some are very successful and are making me hurt. So.
Oh, well, you're too kind, but I'm just excited to finally have an SS minus, to get out there on the track. But Star at the River right now is as long as I can just find a way to squeeze in and qualify, for the 3rd time, I'll be pumped.
You pretty much only need like probably 1 or 2 more points. Towards the end, it gets a little competitive, but usually 10 at this point is probably, you're like, pretty big favorite to get in. So just grab a 4th or just start winning again. That's the easiest way.
Easy. So if I can just, that's a huge goal for me. I didn't expect to be in this situation as early as I was. I got, I won the lottery obviously when I claimed that horse, but and so it's gonna like kind of set high expectations for me that I probably won't be able to have a realistic shot at kind of reliving for probably until, like I said, maybe like June. It feels like June, July is like kind of that window where stuff kind of, I start, reaping the benefits of kind of all of this.
And it looks like I got like 3 qualified there now. So I'm just going to root for you to get 4th in the major. And then in 5 weeks, we'll be talking about the reveal of that. We can
we should reveal it on the stream. That's what we should do.
A reveal stream and be like, well, Sowers said, it probably rolled through some stats and it should be a good breeder. So like, let's look at some of the breeding reports on that horse or whatever kind of.
Yeah, that's good content. Let's plan on it.
All right, cool deal. All right, have a good night. Good luck on the allergies getting better and the kid.
Yeah, bedtime. Yeah, we'll see you. Thanks, man.
All right.
Bye.